The way property's going, if you're an agent and you're not breaking a record every couple of weeks, just quit, go home. That was the key to me, having that amazing year where I bought the 14 properties in 12 months. But I actually bought properties on credit card as well.
You did. I remember you used to.
Welcome, J-Man. Good to see you, brother.
It's been a very long time, although we still catch up and we still talk quite often.
Yeah.
But we've been probably envisioning a sit-down podcast
Long
like
overdue.
this for probably about 10 years.
Long overdue.
So it's happened.
Long overdue, brother. Long overdue. And for a lot of people that don't know, we go way back.
12 years.
Back in the day.
12 years.
Back in the day before we both were really property guys and experts.
We were buying properties together. We were helping each other. We were on the phone quite late at night when you would find a cracker deal or I would find a cracker deal, whether it would be here in our stomping ground in the southwestern suburbs of Sydney or at that stage in the southeast region of Queensland. But I don't think you and I, for probably the space of 2 or 3 years, did not have an evening where we weren't chatting on the phone together about property.
Or obsessed we were.
And helping ourselves, each other and friends navigate, the tricky 100%. World of buying properties.
Yeah, it's awesome. We had MyOb on the computer.
That's it.
It was just before Xero.
No cloud. Xero didn't exist at that stage.
And you had to rock up.
And I was driving to your home doing your bookkeeping and you would literally say, there's the keys, Jeremy, lock up when you're done.
Yeah.
Because I need to go do this deal in Ingleburn. Yeah. And I would come drop the keys off to you, and lo and behold, you'd be purchasing a townhouse that you and Leanne at that stage would be renovating, cleaning, and I'm pretty sure Leanne's still doing that for you. Still doing it today. Still
doing it today. It wasn't always me running out and buying properties because I was always, obviously we know that I was always buying properties and always renovating, but you'd come to my house sometimes, and for those at home that don't know, I was going to say a little bit, but I was a lot of a party boy, right? So I was always out drinking or always out in the clubs and running amok.
But you had a business that allowed you to do that. You set up the systems and the processes.
Cash flow is king.
In a way where the business could run itself. And that was probably one of the best things that you did at an early age. You were an entrepreneur from the very start.
Yeah.
And you were able to have a business that you're able to, generate revenue and profit with minimal touch points from you. So it gave you an opportunity to have a lot of fun.
I still remember you querying some of my withdrawals and
absolutely.
You're like, what's this? What's that? I remember that.
One of the good things about you is you always found a way to make it work.
Yeah.
I would be probably on the ultra conservative side and would want to have, more than enough money being saved up. And I know that you would pay the deposit, and when it come to settlement, you would find a way to pay the difference from a lending perspective. And quite often I know that you would, be chatting with brokers and they would tell you that the loan can't be done, and you would say that's not good enough, and you would find someone to get that loan done.
I'd always find a way. And I think that was the key to me, having that amazing year where I bought the 14 properties in 12 months was because I would do things that were beyond what a regular person would do. Like my risk profile was comfortable. I was comfortable with risk.
It was, but anyone who's listening, I'm actually going to say I can verify that you did buy 14 properties in 1 year.
Thank you. So it's not just me talking.
I was doing the accounting for that. I remember having to chase you for loan contracts and settlement statements, and I was baffled at how much LMI that you paid.
Yes, LMI is so important
for those properties. So I can verify you did buy 14 properties in 1 year at that stage.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And there was a lot of LMI. I don't know if you remember this, but I actually bought properties on credit card as well.
You did. I remember you used to withdraw money from the credit card, and I used to complain and whinge why you would see fit paying 21% interest, and you say, Jeremy, that is all part of the transaction. Yeah. Because if I don't get into this particular property and renovate it and do what I need to do, there's $100,000 I'm missing out on. So Jeremy, you look at the $4,000 worth of interest I've got to pay. I look at the $100,000 I'm missing out on if I don't purchase this property.
Yes.
And that really shaped me because at that stage I was very early in my portfolio. Enough to know that I'm not going to go down the aggressive path of borrowing from my credit card, but enough to understand that, hey, sometimes there is a cost of not buying as opposed to purchasing.
Yeah. So I being the risk taker, I would rather be in than out. At the end of the day, I started with nothing. We leave this earth with nothing. You got to have a crack, right? And we all just have different profiles, and it's all based on our upbringing. My upbringing was a little bit crazy, hence why I'm a little bit, tolerant of risk. And you've seen my driving as well, right? So anyway, going back to that, you would come to do MyOb at my house. But I remember opening the door and I'd been out all night partying, right? And this happened more than one occasion. This happened many occasions. I'd be out all night partying and I'd open the door and you'd be out there, you'd be in there working, and I'd just fall asleep on the couch during the day. And that was the amazing part about setting up my business, that I had the ability to do that.
You did.
But I was partying a little bit too much. I think it was like 5 nights a week at one point. It was
excessive. It was excessive, but your life was excessive at that stage, right? You were excessive the way you invested.
Yeah.
Excessive on the risk that you did take, and it paid off. And you're excessive on having fun as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was
I don't half-ass anything, Jeremy.
I don't think there was anything wrong with that, because your excessiveness had a balance to it.
Yeah.
You were kind of balancing all the excessiveness across all the different things that you did. So it's probably not for everybody.
No.
And I don't think a lot of people would keep up with you at that stage. I know I definitely couldn't.
Yeah.
Or wouldn't. But in saying that, what it did teach you was it taught you that, hey, I can turn this into a business.
Yeah.
And that's what you did. And then from that, your first buyer's agency was formed, where you literally were helping friends. I remember many times that you'd be helping a lot of people for free at that stage.
Yeah.
And your comment to me was, Jeremy, this is not about money. This is about building experience, because I need now to understand what other people's risk tolerances are. I can't just assume everybody's an investor like me as Michael.
Yeah.
So that was good to see that, you mastered your craft for many, many years before, Pinnacle was born, and now where you're managing lots of people.
100%. There's a lot of changes. And one thing I'm definitely going to say, and I have no doubt in my mind you're going to agree with this, because this is probably the case for you. The kid who bought 14 properties in 12 months, right? The crazy risk guy. I'm still risky, by the way. I'm that style of guy, right? It's just how I am. But the kid that did that, I look at today as having no freaking, in comparison to the person or the property investor I am today, because what I've learned over the 10 years, 11 years since then is what separates me. That's what I think. I think a lot of my education came from that, because I was just cocky, egotistical. I was this kid who just absolutely nailed everything. And I could have, like, if I knew the things I knew today back then, I probably could have bought way more. I probably could have done it way different, right? Because you can see the mistakes. That's hindsight now. But in general, I think the property investor that I am now was made over the last 10 years. Not during that crazy time period where I was absolutely...
Yeah, but in saying that, it worked for you, right?
It worked, 100%, not doubting.
Those properties made a lot of money over the years that you held it. And I think the difference of what you did compared to, say, a lot of other people was that they were very active style of investments. Nothing you bought was just simple.
No.
I remember walking into one of those houses that you bought, and I said, how the hell are you buying this?
Yeah.
And it was just, if anyone watching this house, you would not put your worst enemy in it. It was shocking.
Which one was this?
This was in Ingleburn. It was a townhouse, and or Macquarie Fields. It was a townhouse. You paid about $200 for it, which I thought no one would pay $200,000 for that.
Yeah.
And the walls, literally, when I walked in, I could feel my feet picking up clumps of dust from the carpet.
Yeah.
And I was scared to touch the walls because I could literally see probably an inch layer thick of tobacco and oil on the walls. And then to see what you did with that property after 6-7 weeks after it settled, I think you had a reval on it of mid-3s or even early 4s at that stage.
Was it? Yeah. I only spent like $7,000 or something on it.
Cleaning. That's all you did.
Just tidy up.
Cleaning. Yeah. But that was a property that no one would have walked into because you would have to have a hazmat suit on to walk into it. Yeah. And I remember handing those keys to you saying, mate, I'm going home.
Yeah.
And then popping my head through to see this disaster you were buying. Even I at that stage didn't even see the vision you had. For me, I wouldn't have touched it. I would have let Strata take care of the issue and probably would have got Strata to knock it down.
Yeah.
Because it would have been a hazard to the other townhouses in the complex. But you did it.
Yeah.
And you had a vow within, I think, 7 or 8 weeks after completing of 350.
Yeah.
Maybe even later.
It was a cracking vow.
Saw you extract
Money
the equity
went out.
And then bang, you're at the next one. So, that was vision. You're very active and you have been very active with your portfolio over the years. And I think that is what set you apart from other investors at that stage. You weren't afraid to get Leanne's hands dirty. That's
Get
Leanne's hands
my brother-in-law.
dirty. And your brother-in-law to extract and see the value that other people couldn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important part, and those type of properties are here today, is you've got to be able to see what other people can't. And it comes from due diligence, it comes from research, understanding the area, understanding a development control plan or an LEP for argument's sake, or even understanding the internal metrics of the market, really getting understanding of what agents are doing.
Yep.
And the one thing I can say, and again, not tooting horns, it's more so for anyone listening, this is the steps you need to do if you're going to go about this on your own. You knew every single agent. And I used to remember seeing from your personal credit card, you would buy them a gift at Christmas, whether it would be a bottle of Jim Beam, some flowers, chocolates, gift cards.
Wine.
You did that for literally every single agent you'd met.
Yeah.
and they knew you by first name.
Oh, yeah.
And you weren't even a buyer's agent then.
No, I wasn't.
So that to me is something that, again, if you're listening, if you're going to go about this on your own, and, I've done it for the most part, bought on my own accord, I've always tried to really bring those agents into my inner circle, get them to know who I am, get them to understand who I am as a person, and they then really could match the type of property to me, very much what you did, because many of your properties were purchased, not because you found them, but you had a phone call. You had 30 minutes to get here. Michael, this property is going to be sold. You've got 30 minutes to get here. Come look at it, make a contract, and then you would race off in your car. And within 40 minutes, you'd sign the deal. So that's some of the stuff you did. And again, people listening, that's some of the stuff you need to do. If you want to become a sophisticated investor, you need to be prepared to befriend, bring people into your inner circle, get them to know as much about you as you know about them. And that's when you can really start to turn the dial on your investing.
And you need to, once you develop these relationships, you need to be able to pull the trigger quick.
Absolutely.
So I remember literally, and I've told this story a couple of times because it's one of my favorite that stands out. It is literally calling an agent that I didn't know, but I called him. It was for the Heckenberg deal. And I just sort of said, grab, because back then you'd have the contract of sale. There's one printed out in each office for when the buyer comes in and signs. Before DocuSign, long before DocuSign. And I'd say to the agent, grab that contract. I'm going to come to the office. I'm going to sign it. I'll pay the 0.25 and then we'll go look at it. But I already know at $260K for a house in Heckenberg, they're worth, low to mid threes. I know that the post-wall fibro is going to cost me between 25 and 30K to reno. I already know this in my head without seeing it. So I'm not there to waste the agent's time. I'm there to just buy it. I know what it is and I'll wear it. Turned out $26,000 on the renovation. So I'm spot on the calculation. Renovated it and extracted the equity and moved on. But it was understanding the market and the speed at which I moved comfortably whilst assessing the risk. And paying the 0.25 was okay. It was a $700 gamble or whatever it was.
But again, in saying that, a lot of conversations we used to have quite late at night, we knew the area of Heckenberg and Ashcroft and Miller. Now, anyone listening doesn't know who these areas are. These are southwestern suburbs of Sydney, pockets very close to some really good amenities, major satellite CBDs around it, such as Liverpool, and right next to or not far away from the new Eastern Creek Airport that's getting built. And that was even proposed back then when we were buying. But we knew that area. We knew streets. We knew who the agents were. We knew who we needed to befriend from an agent perspective, who was getting all the relationships. That's it. And we knew that virtually, again, these are all ex-housing commission homes. 95% of them were built with exactly the same materials, exactly the same orientation on the property, which is that little bit of a twist where bit difficult to get a granny flat on it because you didn't have the side access. So that enabled you or I to be able to make decisions very quickly to buy a property for ourselves. So the buying the property is not done, with 2 or 3 weeks worth of research. I remember we were months, if not many, many months, understanding areas before we were able to pull
able
triggers.
to get to the level where you can just go comfortably, pull the trigger. Like now, I'll look at a property, it takes 10, 20 seconds, and I'm like, okay, buy. It's like that. The understanding of the market, the type of asset, how it sits in my portfolio and everything, I already know. So when I see it, it's just like, yep. And that comes with years. But I remember there was a time in 2010 when I would sit on realestate.com till 2 a.m., not being able to find the under market value deal, not knowing what to look for. It takes time.
Mind you, 2010, we're still looking at newspapers and going to the windows of real estate agents.
I remember reading the newspapers.
It was, buying then compared to buying now is very different. Buying now is very, based on technology and relationships, more buyers agents in the market. I think it's actually incredibly difficult. And I know you and I are going to have a debate about this.
We're going to have a debate about this, but I want to show you a photo before we start.
Yeah, there we go. That was my...
This is my party days. Yes. I had this big bottle of alcohol, and that was you coming over one of the days.
That was it. I remember seeing that. You bought that from Costco, just opened up.
When it opened.
And I've never seen a bottle... and again, you guys are watching
this. We'll roll it in.
It was a Belvedere bottle. I think Belvedere bottle of vodka. I'd never seen a bottle that big in my life.
Mate, I seen it. I just had to buy it. I was like, mate, this is a party bottle.
And that would have been in your study, in your office, where I used to sit down, rock up at 8:30 in the morning. And I would do a whole day's worth of bookkeeping for you. They were the fun days and the days I still love because I learnt a lot at that stage as well. So I think, again, listening, anyone watching this, you've got to try to learn from anyone around you, whether you're running your own business or an employee of someone else. And at that stage, I was an employee. I was learning from all my clients because I was meeting some very successful people. People like yourself, ran a business, and I couldn't fathom and understand how someone could run a business and do, 2 or 3 hours worth of work a day. But that was the systems and processes you set up to do that. Jeremy, I'm all about putting good people in the right position to do the right job. I thought you just had to work 15 hours a day, have stress, have grey hair, and that's how you ran business. And buying properties the way you did, and I got to meet some really good people that were even more sophisticated than you and I, and learning from them had tailored what I am today and what I've been able to achieve, and very much yourself as well.
And the same education I got from you, my friend. I remember we're just kids coming up. That's the way I see it now. And this might be my age talking, but I just look at us as kids coming up, learning what we can, and we were keen to learn. We were absorbing as much information as possible.
Absolutely.
And everything that we could do to make us better investors. I even remember, we had some small wins along the way.
We did.
And these are small wins. I mean, like the time you bought your Mustang.
I did.
You remember that? The blue Mustang?
The grey one, actually. Grey, was slightly blue, but yeah, that was one of my goals. I never thought I would ever be able to buy a sports car, and I got to a certain amount of properties and a certain amount of income, and I got it, and that was a very proud moment for me.
And that's what it's about.
I remember you were one of the first people I drove over to go see to show you that, hey, I've dreamed about this. I said to you a while that I'll be doing it, and I did it.
Yeah, I remember driving it. Yeah. I remember it, mate. I remember it clearly.
One of the fond memories I have, and that's important because it was. I always say that you do need to reward yourself along the way. And although I don't have that car anymore, I did sell it because the accountant in me was struggling to pay for the price of fuel. For that one, I couldn't fathom the cost of fuel to drive 350 Ks, but it was important that I ticked that off the list, and having those small wins makes investing worthwhile.
And now, as we're older, those things don't mean as much to us.
No, not at all.
They were just what we wanted because we didn't have it as kids, obviously. And you just wanted to have the nice car. You wanted those things. And now you look at cars as just what they are. They're vehicles.
To get you from A to B.
So let's talk about vehicles. Property. Property is the vehicle we're choosing to obviously create wealth and success. We were just talking before this about the fact that, I think it's easier to build a portfolio now. You're saying it's probably easier back then.
Absolutely.
I think it's easier now and that might be my experience, a little bit of hindsight and whatever. But yeah, tell me, why do you see it that way?
Oh, there's 20 points. Let's just start with the main ones. So lending, when we started buying properties back in the mid 2000s and late 2000s before it hit 2010 plus, lending was easier. You and I were getting loans at 95% plus LMI.
I didn't even get pre-approval all the time.
Pre-approval wasn't in your vocabulary, but it was in mine. But for me, it was much easier to get loans. I was buying, I think I had about $800,000 debt, and my income was only about $50,000 at that stage. Where today, $50,000 worth of income, mind you, currency's deflated in those particular times, and what's $50,000 back then is not what $50,000 is today. Yeah. But the lending is definitely a lot stricter post the Royal Commission. There's a lot more time involved, and any mortgage brokers that are listening will definitely attest to it, to say how hard it is to do the same amount of lending compared to what it was 10 years ago. So I think lending's definitely changed. The environment's changed. Buying properties, there was none of this. There was probably a handful of buyers agents. And I was lucky enough to know a lot of the legacy buyers agents, people that really brought it over to this country from the US. Now, anyone who's listening, again, who doesn't understand the concept, buyers agents very common in the US. You don't transact on a property if you're not dealing with a buyer's agent. Real estate agents sell, buyer's agents buy, and that's how it's done. But in Australia, it was unheard of to pay someone to help you buy a property. You've got to be nuts. That doesn't happen. So there was only a handful of buyer's agents. A lot of the properties weren't even listed on realestate.com or Domain at that stage. People still looking at the old paper to find the sales, or they'll go into the agent's window. So there was only just the early adoption phase of buying property online. At that stage, I was still using probably a 3310 as a phone. So there was no color screens, right?
Playing Snake.
So you didn't have technology back then as you did today. So the people that were willing to put in the time to buy property, you were buying them. You didn't have the competition. Where I look today, I have never seen a saturated market of property advocates ever in my life, and it's only becoming more saturated as we speak. And I don't think it's a bad thing because it's educating and getting more and more people into the property market. We didn't have the forums that we have today, such as podcasts. It's amazing being in this particular studio, and I was having a giggle to say we used to attend seminars where 20 or 30 people turn up on a Tuesday at 7 o'clock at night, and now one podcast can reach tens of thousands of people. I know my own YouTube channel reaches tens of thousands of people. So it's amazing the level of information that's out there. People's incomes relative to lending, even though people are saying it's harder to borrow, I still think people's income relative to borrowing has become better.
Yeah.
Compared to what it was.
I think you look at how I scaled my portfolio back in the day. I was buying everything under market value. We didn't have the data to go and find the exact hotspot at the time. So you'd buy everything under market value, high yield, extract equity, buy again, right? And you buy with that X factor. You'd buy, whatever it may be that would get you that little bit of extra, whether it's add a bedroom or whatever, right? We had to do that to put in that sweat equity to get the equity out, right? But now I'm watching even Che from our team. He's now just about to hit $7 million portfolio from one deposit, started in 2022, one deposit, and hasn't got his hands dirty. Well, let's face it, neither did I, right? I was more of a project manager. But,
definitely.
Okay. So we just sat there and just did the data. Just go buy good deals based on the data, and we recycle and we buy again. And that's all we do.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Data wasn't around back then.
So whilst it's saturated, we can still pinpoint the area and get it before it starts taking off.
Yeah, I suppose the challenge I have is coming from, my background as an accountant and also as a property investor as well. I am finding myself battling lots and lots of buyers agents, and I'm going to be quite open. I'm not going to bash the industry, but a lot of uneducated buyers agents who are coming out and doing a really flashy marketing and buying property. Now their argument will be, well, what's $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 overpriced? I agree, long term, it's not much. But if you're trying to execute and buy hot spots or the warm spots that we all talk about, $5,000 or $10,000 overpaying could be disaster, because you could be buying at the end of that cycle.
Yes,
and I'm seeing some people buying properties definitely at the end of the cycle. That horse is out of the gate. It's bolted. It's gone. And they're still buying there, and they're buying there with buyers agents haven't got runs on the board. They've never seen, some areas and how they've transacted over 10, 15 years. I have. I've seen it. I've seen the rise of these regional areas many times. And I'm cluey enough to know that, hey, I can get in and ride that wave, and I'm going to make sure that I'm out before it dumps on that shore. Yeah. And that's just nothing else other than being in that space for a long period of time.
Yeah.
But my argument to the question and the debate we're having is the saturation of property, of people wanting to buy properties in certain areas due to forums and groups, podcasts and buyers agents. It's almost becoming now impossible if you're not using a buyers agent because of the relationships they have.
Yep.
I've spoken to agents who I've known for many, many years, and I just ask them, guys, who are you transacting with? Oh, Jeremy, I haven't sold a property to a person for 20 years. Not for 20 years. I haven't sold a property for a person for 2 years, 20 months.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you mean? You sell them to a goat, a horse, a bear? Yeah. No, I'm selling to buyers agents. Yeah. So I say, so you're selling to pigs? Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say pigs. It was a bad joke at the wrong time. So he's done for the last 20 months, he's been transacting only with buyers agents.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge that I have. So my argument is, yes, it was easier when I was buying all those years ago because lending I felt was easier and we didn't have the amount of, I would call it education in the market. If you were smart, you were getting the good deals.
Yes.
Now people are employing very smart people to get them the good deals. And that's who now I'm up against, a lot of educated buyers agents. And as I mentioned, some ones who are overpaying who may not be as educated in the market. And that's why it's tough. So I know that you're a buyer's agent. It may be a little bit of self-fulfilling what I'm saying, but if you're not having professionals in your corner at the moment,
you can't win.
You can't win.
You can't win.
I am losing properties that I'm making offers on to buyer's agents, and I've got good relationship with those real estate agents, but they're not willing to throw a dog a bone for me because at the risk of their buyer's agent, they've been doing 20, 30 transactions.
Well, this now becomes an ethical conversation that I'm not going to. I don't want to go into because I want to continue to tell you that I think it's easier today, but to buy property. But at what point do we draw a line in the sand and say, well, hang on a sec, as the sales agent, are you representing the vendor or are you solely working for a buyer's agent?
I could probably argue to say in owner-occupied dominated areas, you've got sales agents which are definitely representing the vendors. No doubt about it. They want to get the highest price on that street. They're not dealing with people that are investing because no one's buying, let's face it, no one's buying a $2 million home to rent it for $1,000 a week. It does not make sense. Yeah. But when you go to those very investment-dominated areas, and let's call them investment-grade quality properties, where the yields are 6+%, they are working, in my opinion, in some instances, not all, I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, but they're working on behalf of the buyer. They're looking for volume, especially in those lower priced areas where properties are worth $400,000, $500,000, and $600,000. Your agent's not getting, and it's going to be crazy when I say this, your agent is actually getting less money than what the buyer's agent is charging sometimes the purchaser.
Yeah.
So, I feel that in some circumstances they're working for the purchaser as opposed to the vendor because it's all about making sure that the volumes are there. But in saying that, I don't think they're selling the property at $100,000 below market value.
They're not.
But are they getting, top dollar and absolutely doing 25 open homes to get the best result? One can argue to say probably not.
Yeah.
And that's why I still believe, again, I'm sorry, I'm going to come back to my argument in the debate. It's tougher now than it was before. Okay. Especially in investment grade areas.
Appreciate that. I look at it as obviously the buyer's agent, from the buyer's agent perspective, looking at it going, okay, I went through the old days. I know what it takes to scale a portfolio in the old days. Now we're scaling portfolios simply just on data and just buying the hot spot, warm spot, before anyone else. With the warm spot, we're buying before anyone else gets there usually. And in the hot spots, we tend to build relationships with agents. So that, like right now, for example, I discussed us buying in that particular hot spot and we are doing the most volume in that spot, right? So, I think it's easier with the data now, especially, growing Chase portfolio now to 7 million, just using data. It's in 2 years. It's to me, it seems to be like shooting fish in a barrel. It's not like before. Whereas before there wasn't the data. We had to rely on the sweat equity and buying under value. Every deal had to be an absolute killer deal. It had to be the deal of a lifetime, every deal. Now it doesn't need to be. Now you could literally pay market value and then, buy in an area and extract the equity out in 12, 18 months and buy again because the market's done the work.
And I think that's the challenge, though.
Live your life and renovate.
But that's the challenge. You're coming from the eyes of a buyer's agent who is in this every day of the week. You're living and breathing on an hourly basis what properties are doing in certain markets. And I think that's probably one of the main points. Again, people watching and listening to this, that's what buyer's agents do every day. They just breathe property. They bleed property. And if you're wanting to compete with someone who's bleeding property 7 days a week and 10 hours a day, well, you got to up your game.
That's why I don't know anyone else's work. I mean, this is my this is what I do. This is what I do well.
That's the challenge. And that's why, again, there's a huge amount of injection of the professionals that you're, the professionals that you're in, buying all these particular properties. It's very hard to get really good deals now without relationships with agents, which unfortunately is not going to build with you because you're going to transact with that agent maybe once or twice in your life. That buyer's agent will be transacting with that agent 30 times in a month. And that's the difference. And that's why I still say it is incredibly difficult today, only because relationships are valued more now than ever before. Because of the volume attached to it. Because population in Australia is growing and growing by hundreds of thousands of people a year. That's hundreds of thousands of people that need homes. There's hundreds of thousands of new people coming into the property market every year. And it's hard to have one agent to have a relationship with thousands of people. Where that one agent can have a relationship with one buyer's agent and do 20 or 30 properties in that 1 month. So it's challenging. You're going to do it on your own. You need to be very good. You need to make sure that you're spending as much time as the professionals that are surrounding you. And you need to be confident enough that if you are going to pay market or above market, you've got all the data that is readily available out there, but you've got to interpret it.
Yes.
You've got to interpret it. There's 1,000 cars out there that you can buy, used cars, which may on the surface look as good as the next one. But once you open that bonnet and you start to tinker around with the internals of that car, you'll see if it's a good car or not. And that's the challenge. Not everybody's a mechanic.
No. But a good mechanic is a mechanic, right? That's his trade.
Well, a good mechanic can save you thousands of dollars, not just from the running costs of that vehicle, but saving you from buying a lemon.
100%.
And I think that's one of the most important things. So again, not to toot horns of buyer's agents. As I said, there's a mixture of really good ones. And I've seen my fair share of some shockers out there. And I'm sure many people watching and listening have as well. But that is one of my reasons why I think it's hard. You've got a saturation of professionals in the market who are buying and transacting on thousands of properties a day. And I'm going to go out on a limb to say that buyer's agency is probably the fastest growing profession in the last 5 years outside the tech space than any other profession in this country.
You're right.
So a lot of volume and a lot tougher lending, really good people in the environment who actually know what's going on, and things are changing so quickly. It's almost virtually impossible now to have all the knowledge because things move very slowly 10, 15 years ago compared to now. It's almost impossible to have all the knowledge. So if you've got someone who is able to pivot and move quite quickly, with the economy, with what's happening in the market, then those are the people you need to make sure you stick with.
Yep.
Because that's what will make your purchasing a lot easier today,
100%.
but nowhere near what it was 15 years ago.
100%. And building of that team, we always come back to this and it will always come up, but having a good team, good accountant, good broker, good buyer's agent, you can scale super quickly if you've got a good team. If you don't, you're going to struggle.
Absolutely.
And as a buyer's agent, look, we do get preference. Well, let's not kid ourselves, right? We do. All right. I want to downplay it a little bit, but
now we're hearing all the hidden secrets, right?
Okay. We do get preference. And it's the way in which you talk to agents and, there's a way, look, you've got to understand the psychology of an agent. So an agent wants to make money. Not every agent is there to specifically spend 2 months on one listing to try and get the best possible dollar and put as much time into it. There's agents out there that they're focused on the hustle culture. They're focused on having a big GCI. I'm going to make $1 million, GCI or 1.5 GCI or whatever it may be. These agents are focused on their numbers.
Yeah.
And this is what they're taught actually with some of the majors. They're actually taught to just focus on,
volume.
If you want to make money, you got to do volume.
Volume.
Well, how do you do volume? Well, you do as many deals as possible while spending the least amount of time. By spending the least amount of time, how do you do that? Hook up with a buyer's agent.
Well, that's it. Or
simple.
Just
buyer's agent pumps the deals.
Get the number you need to push the vendor to say yes to and move on.
Exactly.
But again, in the owner-occupied market,
it's different.
Very different.
It's different.
Very different. It is 10 open homes, 15 open homes. It is lengthy auction campaigns. A lot of money being spent on marketing. It is a lot of to and fro.
And a lot of them, especially those. I was looking at an OC in Melbourne above $1 million, and they didn't want to talk to me.
No.
They did not want to talk to me. You're a buyer's agent. They're like, why would we sell with you? Why would we sell to you? So they didn't like me one bit. He probably knew I was sniffing out a deal. It's typical me. But yeah, that's how it is.
Nothing beats an agent putting a signboard up saying number one highest priced property on the street.
Yeah.
That's again in our owner-occupied areas.
The agent's talking about, I just broke a record, I broke the street record, I broke the suburb record. The way property's going, if you're an agent and you're not breaking a record in this day and age, every couple of weeks, then just quit, go home.
Yeah, that's
it's just standard. You didn't achieve anything. You know what I find funny as well? You got all these agents bragging about how they're achieving records in such a crazy market and a crazy time. This was not how the property market was when we started out, right? So these agents all achieving these great records. That's just how the property market is. It just keeps going up and up and up. But you never see someone that's a charity worker, put on their Instagram page, I'm number one. I poured this many soups at the soup kitchen. I'm number one. Whereas you'll see an agent, I'm number one in my area. The amount of flexing that goes on.
Well, that's why you and I are a very big fan of a gentleman, Tom Panos, who is a coach to all the real estate agents and an auctioneer, and you would have seen him on all the blocks. He says it all the time. He, number one, complains that they don't wear socks. He goes, how difficult it is to put socks on in the morning. But number two, beating your chest, every agent's beating their chest at the same time. There can't be that many gorillas in the jungle all in one area.
No.
They'll be ripping each other's heads off.
Yeah.
Focus on your client.
Yeah.
God, I feel like we're doing a real estate agent course. And that's the difference. I think real estate agents also back then, it was a craft. It was an art, where today there is a lot of culture in there. It is all about, flashy cars. And I don't remember seeing any advertisements 10, 15 years ago, Lamborghinis rocking up to $500,000 Campbelltown properties. Although it would have been nice.
That's funny.
Definitely hasn't been.
I think the awards are the funniest. And we'll just touch on this quickly. But to have an award that says you're in the top 17.5%, what is that? You're the top 1%, you're the top 10%. Okay. But what is that? You get awards for showing up in real estate. It's ridiculous. It's quite funny.
Welcome to the world that we're in. But again, lots changed. The property market's changed. And I think, again, a lot of people listening and watching, Michael and I were investing in a time which was during GFC and post GFC. It was a bit of an odd time from a borrowing point of view because the banks weren't sure what to do. They weren't sure to not give people loans, to give people loans. We just went through a GFC where banks collapsed, but if we don't lend money, we're not going to have a business. So it was a very interesting time. We were kind of feeling, and the banks were feeling their feet post a collapse that happened in the US and inadvertently around the world. Properties, people weren't sure what their property was worth because, again, we just heard in the US that property prices dropped 60% in the space of 6 months. So it was a very interesting time to be investing in property when we were in. And then we went through a period of time where we saw properties move quite quickly and we actually saw them dive quite quickly. We saw areas of southeast region of Queensland when we were buying shoot up and were going at 1% or 2% per week as a growth to where they actually went down by about 20% and rents halved. We were in a market where rents were halving. To see them go back up where they are today in 2024-25, being double what we paid for, and the rent's also been double what we're receiving. So the luxury you and I have had is we've got to see markets evolve. We've got to see maybe 2, if not potentially 2.5 to /3 property cycles. So that's given us a lot of wisdom. One could argue to say it is easier for us to be buying 15 years later on because we've now got instinct. We've now got that being subconsciously in our thoughts every day. But I still believe, and again, I'm going to come back to the original context and crux of our debate. I still believe if you're someone who hasn't been through that, you are in the den with the wolves. And unfortunately, those wolves are bigger, stronger, and got a full belly, and you've just come off a 10-mile marathon. So I'm going to say, to end my debate, yes, there is a lot of things out there which have made it easier to transact on property, but with the volume and the supply of professionals that are out there transacting on properties, you stand no chance of being able to find better deals than what someone's paying a buyer's agent to do. And that's why I think it's tougher today than it was 15 years ago.
Okay. I'm going to disagree. We did it before the internet. Now, this sounds a bit funny, but the amount of content was not on the internet that we have or that the kids have today. They can learn. We're always educating. I'm always talking about it. You are always talking about it. And there's so many other professionals that are actually good. There's a few average ones as well. But the amount of content out there that can show you how to do it is out there and so readily available, and it's free. So you have an advantage on that. You have data platforms now like HTAG that you never had before. I think that right now it's way easier. You have certain, if you get the right team, accountants, mortgage brokers, and so on, you structure your finances correctly, protect your borrowing capacity. And then if you hire a good buyer's agent as well, just throwing out the plug, but you will go further quicker. So I'm still of the belief that we live in the age of the internet, and it doesn't matter who you are. I tell my old man this, information is so readily available for not just real estate, but whatever you want to learn in this world today, that we have that to jump online and learn as much as you want. My dad never had that. We are truly blessed now because 2005, man, I had a fax machine in my, like come on. So anyway, I believe it's easier today, but I want to talk quickly, just as we finish up, Parliament Road, Macfields. There was a property there for $250K during the GFC. Because you were mentioning GFC earlier. It was 8% roughly interest rates, was it?
Yeah,
roughly?
My first interest rate was with an 8 in front of it, if not close to a 9.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that was $250K. And that was was it one of the 1,500 square meters? Did they have 1,500 square meter ones there?
Yeah. Plus
$250K.
plus square meters.
Didn't sell. Couldn't sell.
Today,
there was no one buying it at that time.
Well, today that property could be subdivided.
Into?
Maybe you could have definitely 2 lots if you were to do a land subdivision, or you could have a townhouse development there.
You could have 6,
which could allow you to do anywhere between 3 to 6, depending on your DA application.
Yeah, and everyone was worried about the 8% interest rates. Everyone was worried about GFC. But that $250K property today, Parliament Road, which is just down the road here, what would that be worth now?
That property by itself would probably be in excess of about 1.5 to 1.8 as a minimum.
Yeah.
But if you were to develop it, again, building costs back then was substantially cheaper, but a brand new, well, not a brand new, let's call it a 10-year-old strata titled 3-bedroom townhouse would probably sell very easily with a 7, if not a very low 8 in front of it today.
There you go.
So if you held it and land banked it, you would have made 5x your money, maybe even more. 6x, 7x.
Yeah.
If you developed it, and at that stage, building prices were probably about $150,000 a townhouse, council contribution fee substantially less. Today, selling all 6, you would have a gross realized value on that at probably anywhere between 4 to 5 mil very easily. So there's a lot of money in that, and the rents on that would probably be $700 a week.
Yeah.
Easily. So big money if you got in at the right stage. And again, look, hindsight. Paying 260 or 270 would be overpaying at then, but underpaying today. But I still believe in my heart, you've always got to make sure you're paying the right value at the property. You can't just pray and hope that, yes, it's going to grow. I'll overpay today. Who cares?
Yeah.
Because I still have seen properties for many people who have bought at the wrong time, sold at the wrong time because they just didn't align the cycles the right way, and overpaying bid them. So you always got to still make sure you're paying fair market value or below for a property. Don't just overpay for the sake of it.
100%. Jeremy, great catch up. I appreciate it very much.
Always a pleasure.
Take care, buddy.
I'm going to hijack. I'm going to hijack your podcast. Apologies, but if you are watching on YouTube, I love to reply to a lot of comments.
Yep.
So I want you to put your comments down below in the YouTube. And if you think I won, give me a thumbs up or a like, and I'll make it difficult for Michael to win. If you think Michael to win, make a comment saying Michael wins.
Yeah, and if you really want to win yourself, give me a call and we'll prove it with your property portfolio, and we'll come back to Jeremy in a year or two when I build it.
Thank you, mate.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please like, subscribe, share with a friend, and we'll see you next time on Property Banter.